What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with another tune from the Phantasy Star II soundtrack by Uwabo Tokuhiko, who also composed the music for the first game. And as I discussed in those previous reactions where I did 4 in one batch, after I finish going through Shining Force CD, we will play the excellent Phantasy Star I, after which we will then play the crown jewel of a late 80s RPG, Phantasy Star II, which really is just a special game, as well as the first one, but the second one definitely takes it to another level. And the track we're going to listen to is called Noah, which is interesting, because in Phantasy Star I, there's a wizard-type character who's one of the members of your party, and his name is Lutz, or Lutzu, if you were to say it sort of in Japanese style. In the American or English language localization of Phantasy Star I, they changed that character's name to Noah. So in the second game, which takes place 1,000 years after Phantasy Star I, and without spoiling too much, you eventually come into contact with someone who's been cryogenically frozen, and you awaken them and you discover it's Lutz. But they don't change the name in the American or English language localization in part 2. So, I understood who it was just based on context and the way he looks. But yes, in the first game he's named Noah, and then when you awaken him in the second game, his name is Lutz. And so if you didn't make that connection, or if you didn't know the context, it'd be a little like, wait, who is this guy? Nevertheless, I do think this track, Noah, which plays in the very final... It's not a dungeon per se, but a dungeon in the RPG sense. In the very final area before you fight the final boss of Phantasy Star II, this track plays. And yes, it's called Noah. So I think it's playing off of, and ironically, they changed the name again. I think it's playing off of the fact that shortly before this, you meet the reawakened Lutz, who imparts some information to your party. And so I think, number one, it's playing off of a character which spans both of the two games, despite them being 1,000 years apart. And regardless of the lack of changing, or the lack of reversion to the original name like happens in the game, this tune very much conveys the intensity of the moment, meaning, you've discovered some truths, you've gone through this long game, and I mentioned the Phantasy Star II game, if you do everything, if you really build up your characters and so on, it could be multiple 100 hours of gameplay. At the very least, we're talking upwards of 100 hours, if not more. So you've gone through so much, and there really is so many different parts to the narrative. Then you've found out these important truths, and you're barreling toward this final conflict. So this track conveys that intensity, that suspense, but also there's a sense of righteousness in the tune, that what you're doing is important, and you're, fighting for not only the people in your party, but everything that these different planets, because it takes place in the Algol planetary system, or star system, which has 3 planets in the first 2 games. But yes, it's like you're fighting for everyone to, save them and so on. Not unlike Chrono Trigger, where you're ultimately fighting for everyone you've met and the planet as a whole. So there's a sense of righteousness in the tune as well. So I really enjoy it. It's fast-paced, it's energetic, but also uplifting, but with a sense of duty and the fact that the stakes are very high. So I think that all comes across in the tune. As with a couple others that we listened to from the soundtrack, this one loops, I think, 3 times, so it's just under 2 minutes long. Let's give it a listen. This is by series, or at least composer of the first couple games, Uwabo Tokuhiko. From the Phantasy Star II soundtrack, it is Noah. I love that it's going into that very melodic part. So again, the intense, fast-paced beginning, like the opening of the loop, it really gives you a sense that the stakes are high and the difficulties you're facing are going to have final consequences. And I love that very fast, like rapid fire note, which is then contrasted with the like longer arc or like smooth melody on top. But then when it goes into that bright part that I was sort of accentuating with gestures, that gives you a sense of like righteousness, and we're fighting for something, and there's an emotional quality to the struggle and the stakes that are so high. So I think it's really well composed, and it's a testament to these old games, the 8 and 16-bit era in particular, where they were working with limited hardware, and they didn't have like full orchestral abilities like later disc-based games would have, but they still managed to really convey a lot with those limitations and with the hardware they had. So shout out to Uwabo Tokuhiko, shout out to Phantasy Star II. Again, I think this track may be only used in that very late dungeon, which again, it's not like a dungeon in a literal sense, but in the context of the game, it's this large sprawling area where you got to figure out where to go and ultimately beat enemies as you're exploring and trying to find your way to what in this case is like the final boss of the whole game. But it also again has this very human quality to it as well. So I don't think it's used in any other dungeon, whereas a lot of the other tracks, they might be used in like a few places or multiple areas, but this one I think is exclusive to the end, so there's a bit more gravity to it, and it always is very nostalgic to me because again, I beat the game back in the day, and it was one of the longest games I had beaten. It was very satisfying, and as I mentioned before, the ending is just insane. So this tune makes me feel like, oh my god, we're almost here. We've gone all this way, all this stuff has happened, and we're right at the end, and I know it's coming. So yeah, there's a big nostalgic quality for me as well. From Luca and I, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Peace.